I'm just going to
welcome in BigTen backers. We got a UCLA Bruin show brewing for you, man. We got our boy James H. Williams here. He's going to throw down and give you a little deep dive into UCLA and what they got going on this year. But yeah, welcome in. Welcome in, James. Welcome in, BLEAV. We are back again.
Fellas, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I know we've been kind of setting this up for a little while, so looking forward to it. I think we're about a week or so away from the season, so excited to get started.
Oh, we're ready.
Right.
We're going to play our little intro video here, get these backers warmed up, and then we're back at you.
Let's go, Packers, let's come on! Purdue sucks! But so does Michigan and Ohio State! Love you, man.
I'd like to know where Lou Holtz is right now. This is a tough team right here. We're proud to be from Ohio, and it's always been Ohio against the world.
Who taught you how to fight? Who taught you how to be a warrior?
I hate playing against these guys. I hate playing them.
Like, you're making me uncomfortable. Like, I don't.
You better get me right now.
They're fighting for clicks, we're fighting for wins. Right? This game ain't going to be played in Hollywood.
We're in LA. It's us and USC.
We are at the top of the Big Ten conference. I mean, we're at the top of any conference. I don't ever look at ourselves below anybody. We are
best there is, plain and simple. I mean, I wake up in the morning, I piss excellence.
Sure, you get some of that NIL money that he's sharing with Dan Lanning, but sure you get.
There's some things going on that aren't right as well, so we'll talk about how to handle it.
Really, 2 or 3 beers or 4. I've probably done that 1,000 times in my life.
I'm a man. I'm 40.
Love you, man.
All right, man. So that's our beautiful intro, man. We'll try to capture a little bit of everybody.
Yeah, hey, you got everything in there.
So you run the BLEAV in UCLA podcast with your boy Josh Woods. So give us a rundown about your show, man. Tell the Big Ten backers what you're all about.
Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, the BLEAV in UCLA football podcast. We're about to start up our 3rd season here. It's funny. I started covering high school football out in the inland area for SoCal. And one of the high school stars at the time when I first started was Josh Woods, and I interviewed him once or twice. He was playing both running back and linebacker at Upland High. Fast forward a little bit, he has like 1 more year left with UCLA, and I'm just getting started. They send me out to cover UCLA football. I don't know what I signed up for, but I'm just happy to be there. But I'm looking at the guys on the roster, and I'm like, who are some people I know to get me by the first week and kind of get in the flow of things? And I see Josh Woods there. I see a few other guys that I covered in high school. So just been able to talk and build that relationship with Josh over time. And then I had the opportunity to do the podcast, and they said, hey, we can assign you a player or who's someone that you want. I said, no, let me pick. I got a guy. So I went with Josh Woods. It was very easy. He's playing for the BC Lions. Obviously, he is injured. But yeah, so our show, I like it because we had that player's perspective, especially the last couple years when Chip Kelly was serving as the head coach there. Josh had been in that locker room, right? He's played for Chip Kelly. He has that understanding of what it was Chip was trying to do and what the mindset was, what the guys were feeling during different points in the season. So I always thought that was a unique perspective that we brought. Obviously, there's a few other UCLA podcasts out there, and I know all those guys, but we have that player's perspective that a lot of the other ones don't have. And Josh is pretty candid with some of his comments on there and stuff and doesn't hold back. And obviously he's familiar with Deshaun Foster, who's the head coach now. So still got that perspective. He's very familiar with Foster, even though Foster was the running backs coach and Woods was playing linebacker. So it's a good perspective to have.
Absolutely. Oh man, we got to get into a couple comments. You had some love already.
Yeah, got some guys in there. Yeah.
Travis Marshall. He's saying, BLEAV in
Travis.
UCLA, giving you some credit. 4's up and 8 clap.
Yeah, Travis is a good one. I appreciate him.
And Andrew, he runs the Villains podcast. He talks mostly about the SEC. They're not an SEC podcast, but we were kind of giving them some crap, trash talking them a little bit on their show yesterday. So he's coming back to spread the love. Bring it, man. Bring it.
Thanks for joining us, Andrew. All right, man. So you got that podcast. You've been doing your thing, but also you've been covering UCLA as a reporter since 2019, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah.
So
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah. No, Chip's second year there. I started reporting on the team. It's been a wild ride. Just kind of understanding how things work, right? And I think the thing with Chip is it was a little rough there early on, and things eventually got better, right? It took a little time. It kind of took a full cycle for him to kind of get his guys in there. So around year 3, year 4, they kind of found their stride a little bit. The fans weren't very happy with Chip, even when things were looking a little good. So it's safe to say they were pretty thrilled when he took the Ohio State offensive coordinator job.
Oh man, that's right up our alley. I'm a big Buckeye fan, by the way. Buckeye Steve here. So, man, what are your favorite memories since 2019?
One of my favorite memories. So just a little backstory there. The Rose Bowl, it's a big stadium, right? It can fit anywhere from 100,000, 90,000. I think you guys have been there, right? But the attendance doesn't always hit the mark sometimes with the UCLA games, and things had been a little rocky, obviously, those early years with Chip. So one of the first games back, if not it was the second game back from COVID for UCLA. They're hosting LSU, and I'm like, man, as a LSU is probably going to run on these boys here, but it ended up being a great game. It went back and forth, and UCLA managed to get the best of LSU. But the thing I loved about it most was kind of being on the field before the game and just like looking around the Rose Bowl and seeing it packed with people compared to what some of the other games had been. That had been one of the best memories for me. It's just, I always heard about the Rose Bowl and what it looks like when there's so many people in it and the press box is rocking during games. And for me, that was the game. Obviously, I've covered some Rose Bowl games too, so those have been nice as well. But yeah, that LSU UCLA game, that was definitely a highlight.
And the San Gabriel's in the background. You can
the
see
San
that
Gabriel's
press box well.
Yeah, especially the Rose Bowl game. That's always a thing, and the sun is hitting that sunset, and it's just right on those mountains. It's a sight to see. It doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah, perfect setting. I imagine with you covering UCLA the last few years, you probably have a pretty good touch with the fan base. So how's the fan base feeling about the transition into the Big Ten? Are they excited? They're missing the Pac-12. What's going on with the fan base there?
Yeah, I think it's probably it's a little bittersweet, right? Especially maybe early on. I mean, even then there was probably some mixed feelings. I think it's a little bittersweet, right? I mean, there was no bigger fan of UCLA than Bill Walton, for example. And, he wasn't very thrilled with the transition at the time. And that was kind of, he kind of represented that other side of why can't we just stay in the Pac-12? Why does the Pac-12 have to go away? This, and that. But I mean, it's a business, money's involved. The thing with UCLA is there was some talk of them being in the red with the athletic department, obviously owing coaches some money that they had let go and whatnot. So obviously the Big Ten money helps quite a bit. And I think the resources that will come with that and that they can start putting into the football program. Obviously, if you guys are following a little bit of the basketball program, I don't follow it as much as I do the football program, but the NIL is jumping this year. They have one of the top portal classes coming into this year for basketball. So football has been doing pretty well with the NIL and stuff like that. And so there's a lot of optimism and stuff. It's not gonna be an easy schedule. That's for sure. You're not playing the same Pac-12 teams that you're used to playing. So it's a new crop of teams. And I think that's kind of exciting too. And I mentioned the attendance with the Rose Bowl. I think you're going to get a few of these teams who weren't frequent visitors to the Rose Bowl game itself coming out of the Big Ten, just because you had Penn State, Michigan, or Ohio State kind of usually taking that spot more often than not. It's going to be a good opportunity for some of these other Big Ten teams to get in there and kind of see the Rose Bowl for themselves. So I think the attendance is going to do well from that. And I've heard there's some good hospitality at times from some of the Big Ten teams. And I think UCLA will kind of meet that mark as well. But you never know in LA.
Dude, it sounds like it sounds like they're trying to increase, the student involvement. They changed where the student section is. So they're going to be behind the opponent's bench. And that was a rule, maybe a Pac-12 rule, that they couldn't have the student section behind the opponent's bench, from what I was reading.
Yeah, now that you mentioned that, go ahead.
And now, I mean, that might change the dynamic as long as they get some
Mhm.
busing out there to get out to Pasadena and
Right.
get things started, man. They just need to get all the students on deck to get out there somehow. Like get some party
Yeah.
buses, some double deckers or something, make a good time out of it.
Something. Well, so the big thing is, and it took me a little while to like really kind of like get an idea of this, is like, you have your normal, more often than not, you have these colleges and they all have this same kind of semester system. I believe UCLA is on a quarter system. So the first three
Oh,
games, more or less, it's the non-conference. Their students aren't even there. It's a very select few who actually just maybe live in the area, but even those that aren't moved in yet, or they're moving in or whatever, those first 3 weeks of the season is kind of spotty, right? And usually, I know it was the Hawaii game, I think 2021, they were showing the this wide shot of the Rose Bowl and it was empty. Part of that's because there just weren't a lot of students in town yet, right, to get out to the games and stuff. So that's kind of part of it. But yeah, I think they're doing a lot more. I think just with the past year or so, they made it where they allowed beer back into the Rose Bowl. They're kind of doing a lot more of these kind of things to kind of bolster that excitement again, right? So yeah, I think last year they might have changed it to having the student section behind the crowd or behind the opposing team, but this year they're adding more of a standing room only section.
Yes, but it's like,
but to me, if they're
1
doing
through
that,
10, right?
I'm assuming that means that they're going to be it's gonna be where they're maybe expecting more students this time around.
Sure.
Yeah, so another piggyback on that question, you had some of the Oregon
give me one
fan
second,
base and coach wanted to be called the team out west.
I think I lost my audio here. Give me a second.
No, we got you. I can hear you. Oh, you lost us.
Yeah. Okay, I'm back. Can you guys hear me? Did you guys hear what I was saying?
Yeah, we could hear you.
Okay,
absolutely.
Cool. All right, cool.
All right, so with the players, we had Oregon kind of wanting to be called the team out west. Seems like some of the Pac-12s kind of got like, we got something to prove coming into the Big Ten. Is that the same vibe for UCLA, or are they just grinding, trying to get to work?
Yes and no. I mean, it was kind of unexpected. I mean, it obviously was the bigwigs at UCLA that played their part in getting into the Big Ten, right? So it's not like those at the higher ups didn't know this was happening, but there's still that transition, right? It's like, I didn't think Chip Kelly was going to be leaving this year. I thought UCLA would have done what they needed to do to get him to stay, because the last thing I would have thought you would have needed is to have a conference transition and a coaching transition happening at the same time. So they're kind of just focused on their business to get themselves right and get their ducks in order before they start giving themselves any sort of flashy nickname the way Oregon is. But I think that's just Oregon, right? I think they're just kind of flashy and they're about their business. They're a confident bunch over there, right? My brother actually works out. He works out there as an athletic trainer, so he's kind of in the mud out there with Oregon and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, it's different. I mean, you're not really seeing a whole lot. They're not really talking about it too much. They're kind of just being about their business. Again, the football program, just as I get closer to the season, but you start seeing the Big Ten banner or the patches on the jerseys, right? You start seeing the logo pop up on the backdrop when we're talking to Deshaun Foster for press conferences and stuff. So it's those little things that every once in a while kind of remind you. And so it's interesting from that perspective as to what is going on there with just this whole transition. And I think it's really going to hit them once they start traveling and once they start getting to some of these road games. And I'm sure you guys maybe have seen it by now, but that mileage is going to add up. I think the mileage is going to
around the earth, man,
something close to around the earth. I don't know how many of those trips I'm going to be taking, but I know my mileage is going to be crazy. So I know if I'm going to be tired and fatigued from some of these trips back and forth. The players and the coaches probably won't admit it as much as I would, but they're probably going to be pretty exhausted here at some point during the season.
Well, we'll know how you feel. We went to 17 Big Ten games last year, and I think we're just over 40,000 miles that we did together.
Okay, so you guys are out there.
Yeah, we did a lot. We went everywhere. It was awesome. It was a great time.
Gotcha.
I put a little video together of my trip to LA for you later on.
Okay.
I'll show you, but I want to get to some of these comments because we had some good stuff in here. Like, first of all, we were talking about attendance. So Travis brought it, man. He said UCLA led the Pac-12 in attendance during the Mora era a couple of times.
That's what I heard.
76,000 per game. So, man, I'd like to see some videos of that stadium rocking then.
I got the next comment.
Go for it.
All right. He says cupcakes everywhere in the Big Ten. We don't call them cupcakes in the Big Ten. We call them Brett Bielema's creamed donuts, okay?
There's a difference for sure.
I'm losing my audio here. Let me you guys want to give me a second to grab my other headphones?
Yeah, we'll play that. We'll play that video for you real quick.
Give me 1 second. Let me do that real quick.
Big Ten Beckers live here. We got some UCLA fans. What do you think? All right, what do you think about the game? What's the score going to be?
Oh, I'm going 42-45 UCLA.
Woo!
I think it's going to be more low scoring. I'm going to say 28-25 UCLA.
Low scoring. Have you watched any of the games at USC?
I do. I think UCLA's defense is going to slow down USC, and USC's defense is going to allow UCLA to score.
All right. So I'll take that. UCLA has a great defense.
Yeah, they do. Then we're going to slow them down today.
Is Chip Kelly going to be fired after today?
Yes. Unfortunately, yes. Chip Kelly's gone. Chip Kelly is gone.
Oh, man. So we're the Big Ten backers. What do you think about joining the Big Ten?
I love it. Huge for the program. I think it's a great move. Huge for both teams. So it'll be interesting.
What flyover state do you want to visit first?
Nebraska.
That's a good one.
Nebraska's a good one. I think the environment there is electric.
Yeah, it is.
The whole city shuts down just for on Saturday.
Yeah.
UCLA!
There we go. Let's go. Yeah! All right, Big Ten Beckers are live. We got some USC fans, some UCLA fans. The battle for LA is coming. What do you guys think? But you got to travel to some flyover states and get to see some different stadiums. Are you interested in that at all?
Absolutely. Nobody wants to go to snow weather. Who wants to be in Minnesota, Indiana, Baltimore, New Jersey, crab states? No interest at all. Zero.
They all want to come here, though.
Yeah, they all want to come here. Who doesn't want to come here? Why would you go there? Why would you play your championship game in Indianapolis? Horrible idea. Horrible decision. Nobody from LA wants to be in the Midwest. Hey. Think it again, Chancellor. Think it again.
No lies.
All right. He went off, man.
First of all, sorry for the technical difficulties, guys. But
no worries.
But that was an interesting perspective because I'm usually in the press box. I'm usually down on the field before the game. So I don't see a lot of that. That was pretty wild.
That's kind of our bread and butter, man. We love to get like the fans' perspective.
That was
we'll
great.
get some coaches and players here and there, but our favorite thing is just get fans, man, because that's where the passion, craziness comes from. You know, everybody who's a player, coach, they got to be political and kind of dot their I's and cross their T's.
Right.
But fans, they wow out. So that's kind of our favorite thing to do.
All right, we got to get the Sports Geek, man. Sports Geek 91. He says UCLA always flies under the radar. USC is usually overhyped, the overhyped school in LA. So, I mean, I could probably agree with that.
Look at the game last year.
At least lately, yeah. No one was giving UCLA a chance, and they came out and blew them out.
That's interesting. That's an interesting thing with USC and UCLA. I mean, the last couple of games, since I started covering the team, I think they've alternated wins on the road. Like no one's been able to defend kind of home field really. So if obviously they're at the Rose Bowl this year, so that may look good for you at USC. I know Travis and some others aren't going to be happy with that comment, but that's just the trend. That's not me saying that. That's just the trend. So don't get on me, boys. But yeah,
trends are made to be broken.
Never know. Exactly. It's got to happen at some point, right? So why not this year?
So we got to get into that daunting schedule, man. It is brutal. I mean, you talked about it in other podcasts. They start off the season. What is it? Hawaii. They have Hawaii.
They're going this way.
Indiana.
Yeah.
All right. So they could possibly be 2-0, and then 2 trips to the hardest places in the nation to play at Happy Valley, at Death Valley first, then Happy Valley. The hardest stadiums to play in. Man, how did they pick that? The Big Ten did them no favors either.
You know what? It's so funny because when I talk about this, like, oh, this is, or I hear, oh, this is the hardest, one of the hardest schedules in the country. People are saying this is like a top 3 hardest schedules in the country. And I'm like, they don't even have Ohio State or Michigan or any of those teams on the schedule. I'm like, what are we talking about? Like, it's only going to get worse. Like, I would think it's only going to get worse, but no, it's going to be interesting. I think UCLA, they'll benefit because they'll have some guys that returned. They didn't lose a whole lot when Deshaun Foster took over because Deshaun Foster is the guy that they wanted. So it's not that there's going to be a lack of talent there, or at least familiarity between the guys and having that chemistry. It's just a matter of what they can do with Eric Bieniemy as the offensive coordinator and whatnot. And maybe we'll talk about that in a little bit, but it's going to be a tough schedule. And again, it's not like you're playing the same Pac-12 team for the 100th consecutive year, right? So it's not like the other side. UCLA is really kind of going into it blind with some of these teams. They're going to go into LSU. They're not going to. You can't really be prepared for that, especially when you're playing at Hawaii, and Hawaii's crowd is going to be a lot different than what LSU is going to be, what Penn State's going to be, right? So there's going to be some growing pains there. It's going to be
more growing pains, man. LSU, home against Oregon, and then out to Penn State, like,
yeah,
3 games back to back to back, just loaded.
Yeah, and that's the toughest schedule. That's the toughest stretch.
Those middle of the road games too. They're playing Minnesota, who's also returning a lot of talent from last year.
Yeah.
They're playing Nebraska.
That's
at
playing
Nebraska
at Rutgers,
too, isn't it?
That's at Nebraska, at Rutgers. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, those are trips around the world, man.
Yeah.
And Rutgers is also returning a ton of talent too. Those are all high 70s in returning production. Yeah. So man, they got a tough schedule. Even the lightweight ones, you're thinking those are a little rougher than they look.
That's what I'm saying. There's not really a game that's like the Hawaii game. Like, oh yeah, they should win that game. It's like everything after that. Yeah, after that, it's kind of like, I mean, maybe. I mean, they should win this game, or I mean, none of it. I mean, they could win 2 games. They could. It could be a very ugly first season, and I mean, to me, it wouldn't necessarily be surprising, but I think, the ceiling is kind of maybe 8 wins. I'd maybe look at more like 6 or 7, just kind of fighting to get into a bowl there, right? I mean, the thing for UCLA is they haven't hit that. The program record, I think, is 10 wins. And they came close to it in 2022, if I'm not mistaken. That was Zach Charbonnet and Dorian Thompson-Robinson's senior year. But prior to that, I mean, they've kind of been on the down end of 9 wins. So, I'd be looking at 7 wins, maybe. It's just going to be a rough year because of all the change, whether it's the conference, the coaching staff, everything. I think it's just going to be a whole lot of new, and maybe that works in their favor. They don't know any better. So they're just going in and playing with the hair on fire. I don't know.
All right. So Deshaun Foster, obviously famous for being a running back, got some time, obviously, at UCLA in the pros. Now, what's he going to look like scheme-wise? Because no one's seen him as a head coach before. So what do you think his scheme is going to be for UCLA?
Yeah, a lot to be determined there. Just between him being a running backs coach the last 5 years at UCLA and him just being a running back, and then also Eric Bieniemy was a running back himself at Colorado. I mean, I would imagine there's going to be a lot of run. They've been running some different option and a few little trick plays here and there during the open practice. We don't get to see a lot of it, so a lot of it's still kind of up in the air. The one kind of inkling we do have is Eric Bieniemy said it's going to be more of a West Coast offense than what it was before with Chip and what his offense was, right? So maybe they're working the short pass and then using that to open up the run a little bit. They do have some guys there in the backfield. TJ Harden is a stud. He's coming back. He's only going to be a true junior, if I'm not mistaken. So there's still time for him to develop into what they want him to be. The deepest part of this offense is that receiving core, right? And they have so many guys there. The second string guys could easily be starters for them, I believe, here at UCLA. So I think that the thing last year is there was such an ugly quarterback situation, juggling 3 different guys. This year it's just Ethan Garbers. It's already known he's QB1. And I think Ethan Garbers is going to be able to play relaxed, and he's going to be able to use those receivers he has to his advantage. So yeah, a lot to be determined. The one thing that stuck out to me during one of the few open practices that we have is they're running this slot receiver in motion, and they had him kind of do this loop around the quarterback. I call it Mickey Mouse because it looked like a Mickey Mouse here. He just went around the quarterback, and I'm like, oh boy, what are we doing here? What are we getting into? So all we really know is West Coast offense. I don't think we have any. We have an open practice tomorrow. There's not necessarily any scrimmages coming up prior to the season opener, obviously. So a lot of what the guys have been saying too is, we're watching a lot of Kansas City Chief film. The tight ends are obviously excited because they saw what Travis Kelce did in an offense that Eric Bieniemy was a part of. So the tight ends are all excited at the opportunity to catch balls, obviously watching Patrick Mahomes on tape too and whatnot. So if you're looking for an example of what it should look like, it's probably going to look more like what the Kansas City Chiefs have been. But also, I mean, Eric Bieniemy was obviously the clear-cut offensive coordinator for the Commanders last year. So that might be a better template of what you guys will see. But obviously, it's just a lot of the Kansas City Chief film because that's just kind of what there's more of in a bulk setting. So
my daughter heard that comment and she wants to know if they're listening to Taylor Swift while they're watching those Kansas City highlights.
I cannot confirm that. There is someone on the team whose last name is Swift. I think they're unrelated to Taylor Swift, but maybe they're a Swiftie. But I can't confirm any Swifties on the team. That doesn't mean that there aren't any. I just haven't been able to ask that quite yet.
Right on. Well, Vegas has UCLA as 4.5 for the over/under.
Yeah.
Initially to start the season, and you already kind of touched on it. You're thinking 6 wins. Travis just said he thought 6 wins was the floor. 8.
Travis thinks it's going to be 8 wins.
Yeah, Travis is going for 8, and 8 would be awesome with that schedule. I think that would be a great season, and we just want to know what determines a successful season for Foster.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I like that you said for Foster because for Foster, he's looking to be competitive. He's looking to win 8, 9, 10 games, right? He's looking to be competitive. He's not using the fact that he's a first-year coach or that they have a fairly new staff as an excuse for this team. They want to be competitive. One of the guys, one of the players had actually said that the goal this year is to win a Big Ten championship. Now, I'm not going to knock him for saying that because if you're a football player, if you're in that locker room, that's what you should be saying, right? I mean, obviously you would like to be believing that too. So, so that's the goal, right? They want to, and obviously, I mean, they're not yelling from the top of their lungs, national championship, right? So I like to think there's a little bit of realistic, ideal thought process there. So, yeah, I mean, you would think they're going to be competitive. For me, I know you asked for Foster, but for me, I think it's kind of a year 0 just because of when Chip Kelly moved on from the program. It was way after the hiring cycle had actually taken place, and Deshaun Foster came in there kind of late. On top of that, it took him maybe a week or so to get Eric Bieniemy there, get him acclimated, get that offense kind of running the way they wanted to with Bieniemy. So it's just not only was it a transition, but it was a little bit of a later transition. But I think of it as a year 0. They've been recruiting a lot better than they have in the past. I think next year's recruiting class has a chance to be even better once they have a full year under their belt. But they're playing a lot of catch up this year, right? I just think because of the way that whole hiring process went, they're just kind of behind the 8 ball from the jump this season.
Yeah, and Ohio State had an offensive coordinator, and he moved on before he even stepped foot on campus, really. Right. So Chip Kelly had already denied the position once today, and second time around, he was like, you know what, I'm out.
Yeah,
and packed up to Columbus, right?
Well, and like that was the thing. Like UCLA fans wanted Chip out the door. I mean, they've been wanting him out the door since 2019. He got there in 2018. So after the first year and a mass exodus, they were kind of over it already. The thing is they wanted him out, but UCLA wasn't really, I think, in a financial situation where they could have maybe done that. It would have been a smart move for them to do it. I don't think it was a smart move for them to do it. So they didn't do it. And they would have rather just kind of grinded it out with him. Obviously, Chip Kelly, there was this inkling and these rumors going around that he was flirting with NFL teams and exploring offensive coordinator, head coaching jobs there. So that's kind of the direction we thought he was going to go. And then all of a sudden, he kind of, pops up and ends up at Ohio State. Again, it wasn't totally surprising because he's friends with Ryan Day. Ryan Day was his quarterback, I believe. I think he was at
Yeah.
New Hampshire. And then he was on his coaching staff with the Eagles and I believe even the 49ers. So they're familiar there. I believe when Chip Kelly found out they were going to the Big Ten, he was sitting out in a golf cart and Ryan Day looks over at him and says, "Hey, we're going to be in the same conference in a few years." And Chip's like, "Oh, okay." Kind of
We'll join you.
Yeah. So, but they're boys. They're playing golf together and stuff. So it didn't come off as a surprise to me. Curious to see how that dynamic is. But just for Chip, right? I mean, he's ran a two-back system most of his time here, other than that year with Zach Charbonnet, where he was kind of the workhorse throughout that whole season in 2022, again, if I'm not mistaken. But obviously with the guys that he's getting in there, is it Junkins and who's the other guy I'm blanking on for Ohio State?
Travion Henderson.
And Henderson, right? So yeah. Between those two guys, I mean, Chip Kelly's going to be able to do his thing as long as he has the keys to the car, right? And I'm sure Brian Day is going to trust him with that responsibility. So it's going to be kind of interesting.
He told the media he trusts Chip Kelly with his life. So he better trust him with the damn offense.
I mean, that was your coach, right? You should feel that way about your coach, right?
We want to know who's calling who coach.
That's right. You know what?
You're the coach.
Someone asked me that the other day, like, what is the dynamic there if stuff starts hitting the fan and Ryan Day, Ryan Day is already on this pressure cooker just because they've been behind in the battle with Michigan. That does he look at Chip and say, like, what the hell are we doing? Or what's going, like, do they have that back and forth with each other? I think it's got to
be like father-son, right? Kind of
that's what
mentality.
Someone told me that they felt like it was Ryan Day hiring his dad. And I'm like, I mean, yeah, kind of. I didn't think of it that way, but yeah, I can kind of see that.
It didn't work out for the Kiffins, did it?
It didn't. But, we'll see. It's going to be an interesting dynamic, but Ohio State's Ohio State. I mean, I was an AP top 25 voter for the preseason here, and I had them number 2, if I'm not mistaken, just because I think they have all the talent in the world. There are obviously questions at quarterback, but, I think Ohio State's going to be solid with Chip.
That's fair. Let's reel it back in. Let's get back on UCLA, man.
Sure.
So, how's Ethan Garbers performing in camp thus far, man? Have you seen some highlights?
Yeah, he's doing pretty well. He's looking confident back there, and I think that's the biggest thing for him is he's able just to go into this season knowing he's QB1. He started the season opener last year, but he had Dante Moore, the 5-star true freshman, kind of on his heels from the jump. Conch Lee transferred in from Kent State, so it was just a crowded room. I mean, it's a more crowded room this year. They have like 9 quarterbacks on the roster. 3 of them are true freshmen, and I can't even list everybody in that quarterback room. They're loading up at quarterback, right? And maybe it's a matter of Eric Bieniemy finding his guy, but for the time being, they've kind of stamped Ethan Garbers as QB1, and I think he's going to have a little bit longer of a leash, obviously, because they have to get familiar with that offense. We've talked to Ethan Garbers. He seems pretty excited at the possibility of what the season can be for him. I think this is his big breakout year in a sense, just because he had to sit 2 or 3 years behind Dorian Thompson-Robinson and wait his turn. And he thought he was going to be the guy last year and was looking forward to that opportunity. And it didn't happen that way. So I think this year he's really dialed in. He's kind of taking that NFL approach, obviously, with the offense that Eric Bieniemy is bringing. So he's been looking good. He's been throwing the ball around. He's been looking good, looking a little bit bigger from when he first came in the door a couple years ago. So I think he'll be solid. Obviously, I've been seeing a lot of these different Big Ten quarterback rankings, and he's near the bottom. I think he'll probably surprise some people. I don't think he's going to be the outright best quarterback in the conference by any means, but I think he'll kind of be there in the middle of the pack at the very least when it's all said and done.
Just based on his stats last year, 1,136 yards, 11 touchdowns to 3 picks, 67% completion percentage. I mean, that's not nothing. That's for sure.
Yeah.
That's not bottom of the pack,
Well, that's the thing. When he's in, and when he was in there, he was good. It's just the leash was so short. I think in the season opener, he had 2 interceptions. And then when he did play the rest of the season, which was, kind of hit and miss, depending, I think he only had 1 other interception. He only had, I think, 3 interceptions on the season. You may have the stats there in front of me on that, but I think it was only 3 interceptions. 2 of them were in that season opener. They pulled him out for that. So he's, I think he'll do well. I think people just aren't giving him the credit because there's not a big sample size for people to see, but I think he'll do pretty well for himself. I think they look at what the guys are on offense. They're going to get knocked a little bit because even Dante Moore, I mean, he threw a pick 6 in 3 straight games. So, the quarterback position, it wasn't a true highlight for UCLA the way that it could be this year.
And it might have just been in his head. I got a 5-star sitting behind me. He's eventually taken over. And then he got that all caught up, got a little nervous.
No doubt about that.
Now he can be relaxed, like you said. He could just throw it as long as he got that offensive line, which I wanted to touch on because you said there were some transfers that came in from UNLV and Houston. There were some bigger boys that are going to help him out.
Yeah, some bigger boys there. That's kind of the biggest question, right? And even kind of leaking into what last year was. They've had a solid offensive line the last couple years, but this past year and just even what this year kind of remains to be seen for this year. But last year was a little bit leaky there on that offensive line. Those quarterbacks were taking some hits, so remains to be seen. They did bring in some big boys, but I am kind of curious. The one thing I keep telling myself is I need to kind of do a tail of the tape more or less and kind of see what these guys are bringing in, how they match up with some of the defensive linemen and some of the what they compare to some of the other offensive linemen in the conference now that they're in the Big Ten conference. When you're in the Pac-12, the Pac-12, California is not known for its offensive linemen, and they weren't really going out past Arizona or anything like that looking for talent. So they were always on the smaller end. Even their most solid offensive line was made up of like 3-star guys when they first walked in the door. So I think that's something that they're going to have to address over time, and they're going to have that mindset, especially once they get on the opposite side of some of these teams and realize, oh, we need to get bigger. I think they'll start to address that. I think there's a chance for them to be solid. They do have some consistent guys there. Garrett DeGiorgio is one of the guys that's returning. He actually suffered an ankle injury during open practice last Saturday, and he had to get helped off a little bit. So that looked a little concerning. I don't think he's probably came back to practice since then. I haven't paid too much attention to it. But the understanding is he's expected to be a full go by the time the season rolls around. So they've been looking pretty good so far. They got Juan Castillo, who came in with Eric Bieniemy from the Commanders. And they've been saying a lot of things and speaking highly of him. So I think that room is going to be taking the right path, but I think it's going to take a little time.
I think it's going to be rough on every offensive line in the Big Ten this year. I mean, you look at Penn State's defensive line, Ohio State's defensive line, Michigan's definitely their tackles, man. Like it's going to be brutal on offensive line.
Mason Graham,
big all the way around. So I think that's going to be key to anybody's success. But man, who's he throwing the ball to? Who's Garber's hitting out there? Who's his number one target?
Yeah, so the number one target, and it's kind of interesting because in his first year from Cal, J. Michael Sturdivant kind of had his best 2 games at the end of the season and the beginning of the season, right? And everything in between, we're kind of like, where's this guy at? But I think there was really that connection between Garbers when he got to play in the second half of the LA Bowl and took that game over. His main target there was J. Michael Sturdivant. I think that connection, that relationship will continue to build quite a bit throughout this offseason and going into the season. So that's going to be his main target. I think he's probably one of the top prospects for the NFL draft coming out of UCLA. Not really sure what round they're looking at him for at the moment. Obviously, still a little bit early, but he's probably their main stud in that wide receiver room. Logan Loya has been consistent for them. I believe was their leading receiver, if I'm not mistaken. A lot of shorter passes to him. He's been a guy for them. He came back for, I think, a redshirt senior year this year. So he's going to be there. He's going to be solid for them. They did get this transfer in from Notre Dame, Rico Flores, who did play quite a bit as a true freshman last year. He's came in and he's been a true kind of highlight for them and a bright spot for them throughout spring and into training camp here. And I'm excited to kind of see how he's going to play out for them. He's only going to be a sophomore. He still has a lot of football ahead of him, but I think he's easily competing to be that number 3 receiver in there for them. And like I said, they have a few other guys who were coming back from some different situations last year where that kept them off the field last year that are going to be coming in there. They have some guys, Grant Gray, Brandon Pagan, some different guys that didn't even get to see the field last year who I think can even have the opportunity to come in this year and be a key playmaker if their name is called.
Last but certainly not least, because when it comes to Coach Foster, his affinity is obviously running backs. Who is that dude in the backfield? Who's going to be that man?
Yeah, so I mentioned TJ.
There's a Badger, Jalen Berger, former Badger, I guess.
Yeah, we'll get to Jalen in a minute because I think the main guy they're going to continue to run the ball with. And again, they've had this 2-back system, and it's kind of worked out where one of the two guys at the very least has always kind of moved on to the NFL. You're starting to see Carson still be that guy throughout the offseason for the Kansas City Chiefs, who was at UCLA last year. TJ Harden was that other back in that offense. Deshaun Foster recruited him out of high school, Inglewood High School, thinks very highly of him. I think he's going to be the main workhorse for UCLA this year. You mentioned Jalen Berger. He's been a name we've talked about quite a bit. I think he may have literally showed up the day before training camp started. So he really hasn't been, they've been kind of getting him acclimated. The thing is Deshaun Foster is taking over this program, right? And very early on, they had an open practice during the spring, and we saw 2 ACL injuries like within 3 minutes apart. And we had to ask Deshaun about that after practice, and he was emotional about it, right? Like, because now your guys are starting to get injured, it makes you second guess yourself. How are we running practice? We got to be careful. So when you're getting some of these new guys who weren't there for the spring and they're coming in for training camp, Jalen Berger being one of them, he's really kind of emphasized that, hey, I'm just trying to take it slow with these guys. I'm not trying to run them out there too fast, have them be excited. They can do the most during practice, think they have something to prove because they're the new guy on the team. And he's really kind of held them back a little bit and really just kind of slowly getting those guys going. So I think we're going to start to see, like I said, open practice tomorrow. I think we'll probably have our first real good look at Jalen Berger, but I would probably slot him in at number 2 just because of the experience that he's going to have, having played for Wisconsin and then again with Michigan State, I think more recently. So he's going to be a guy for them. They have some other guys, Cam Jones, a guy from St. John Bosco, which is a powerhouse high school program, especially out here in Southern California. He's going to be a true freshman for them, but he's a big boy. And if they have to lean on him at some point this season, I think he can also be a guy that could be a good fit for them. And then they got Keegan Jones, the shifty guy in the backfield who can play receiver, play running back. I think he's another guy to obviously keep an eye out for in that backfield. So they got some guys back there. It's just a matter of who's going to be the guy who is kind of running alongside TJ Harden there. Again, I think it will be Berger, but remains to be seen.
Yeah, camp is, man, it's like damned if you do, damned if you don't in camp. Because like you don't go too hard, then you get soft. You go too hard, injuries start piling up. So it's like, damn, what do we do? Like I feel bad for coaches like that. And plus, like they love their team, they love their players, man, and seeing them go down anytime, whether it's in season, but definitely in camp, it just hurts, especially when you see that potential, man. That shit is gotta dig.
Like one of those guys was his starting tight end, right? And it was, he was supposed to be a guy for them. He was returning. This was supposed to be his big year. And you just see him go down with the injury that he has. He's screaming. It's all quiet when he's going down with that injury. There was no one around him. Just dropped like a fly. Was in the middle running route, drops like a fly. And
there's no context, man.
Especially when you
usually know those are bad.
Yeah.
When you have coaches like that have made it to the league, like they know the significance of them going down.
That's
too.
part of
like,
it.
Man, he might not make it to his full potential now. And that's gotta be rough.
And that's the thing. I think that's where I think that's what makes Deshaun Foster special to these guys is he's young. Well, he's younger than Chip Kelly, right? But I mean, he's no older. I think he's like 5 years older than me. I'm 32. So Deshaun Foster is able to relate to these guys. He's been in the NFL locker room. He's not that far removed from having been in the locker room himself as a player. So he's able to relate to these guys. And he's been there as a running backs coach for 5 years or more at UCLA, probably like more like 6 or 7 at this point. And so he's watched a lot of these guys come through the door for their official visits, for their first training camp and whatnot. And to watch them kind of be able to take that next step, so
especially when you jump from position coach, because like you're in the weeds with your boys, like as a head coach, like you're so spread out, like you don't get to know your team or your players individually that well. But as a position coach, like you know your team. Yeah, you have a little closer relationship with them, and then obviously way more relatable, and probably have a better personality than Chip Kelly too. So
you said it, not me. Yeah, no, there's some truth to that. But yeah, Hudson Hammermill, it was that tight end, and I think the other thing that kind of bummed Deshaun Foster out is that this was kind of like it was either his senior year or his redshirt year. This was supposed to be his last year. Maybe they can get a year back for him because of the injury and how early it happened into the offseason. But yeah, I mean, you think about that. It's a guy's final year. He's ready to kind of take on that full role as a starter at tight end there. And it just non-contact, boom, just down like a fly.
That's tough. Do they have artificial turf that they're practicing on?
They do. They have 2 fields. They're like about 50, 60 yards each there at the practice facility, but which I kind of think about sometimes. I'm like, why do they do that? But then they go and they play on real grass at the Rose Bowl. But I mean, obviously,
there's kind of LA's known for their grass, right? Snoop Dogg, come on.
You're right about that. But no, I mean, because I kind of thought that was weird. But I mean, I'm sure when you go to these other Pac-12 schools, these other Big Ten schools, I mean, some of those teams, they might have turf, right? So it doesn't hurt to have that familiarity by practicing there in the turf. And I'm sure there's some health benefit to it, one way or another. Some people say grass is better, whatever the case may be. But yeah, they're practicing on the artificial turf. I think were you kind of saying with the ACL injury on that, maybe?
Well, exactly, the non-contact injuries too.
Yeah.
The NFL came out with a study years ago that said that there wasn't any significance. Well, they got some more statistical analysis, and it became that there is a significance in the amount of injuries, and I believe it was somewhere around 30% for non-contact injuries, and it's jumped up from the artificial
It's just
turf.
common sense. Like, you'll see a leg in grass, and you'll see the grass give. Now, turf is not given, so like, give go somewhere else, and it's just, I don't know. It makes sense. It's just too easy.
Yeah, it was just a bit surprising because they had been fairly healthy. They didn't really have any season-ending injuries or anything last year, anything that was a really serious injury to any of the guys. So to have 2 or 3 of them go, they have had 3 ACL injuries. Again, 2 of them happened like 5 minutes apart from each other. You're looking at one field, a guy goes down. You look over here, why is this other guy down? And then you come to find out he had an ACL injury too.
You can always try to find fault, but it seems like every camp, man, every team,
it's going to happen. I mean, you look
at
you look at the Texas backfield, right? I think they've lost 2 of their starting running backs. They're down. I think they might be down to like a true freshman or something. I think
they're down to 1 running back left on the scholarship roster anyway.
It could be worse. It could be worse.
Man, we are just getting going. We thought maybe this would be like 30 minutes, maybe 45 minutes.
Hey, once you start talking ball,
this is
man.
so much fun, man. You start talking ball with us, especially, bringing in someone from LA that's a beat reporter. It's nice to have you. But can we get a few more questions in? I don't want to take up too much of your time.
Whatever you guys got.
The other thing that we really wanted to get with you on was Laiatu Latu off to the NFL. He was a sack leader for this D, man. Who's taking his place? Who's going to take over?
And that's what we all want to know. I think that's what UCLA wants to know. So the biggest thing is you lose Laiatu Latu, the number 1 defensive player taken in the draft, to the Colts, right? So he kind of came into his own. He transferred in. And he kind of surprised people in his first year. You hear the story about his neck injury and all that, and then just it goes above and beyond. Has this breakout year last year. And was kind of the dominating force and was kind of that defense, not to discredit some of the other guys on that defense. The Murphy twins were also part of that pass rush there. And those guys were the ones that were getting in the mud, getting their hands dirty. And when Laiatu was done sacking a guy, those 2 were either there cleaning it up or were there talking crap right after. So
standing over him.
Yeah, standing over a dude or whatever. So they were the attitude of that defense, right? And then you also had Carl Jones, who's with the Chicago Bears right now. So you lost a lot of, just besides losing Latu, you just lost a lot of the production there. So now you look at what you have just a bunch of transfers and some guys that had very limited snaps in a UCLA jersey on that edge rush. So it's kind of remains to be seen. They got Devin Apu, who's been there for 3 years, transferred in from Notre Dame couple years ago now, to the point where I had even forgot he came in from Notre Dame. They did get Jacob Busick, who came in from Navy. He had followed Ken Niumatalolo there, but Ken Niumatalolo is now the head coach at San Jose State. But so Jacob Busick is in there. Those are your guys who look like they're going to start at the position, but that doesn't mean they haven't tried using some of their inside linebackers there in the middle and kind of having them get down in a stance on that line and maybe be part of what your pass rush is going to be. A linebacker, Olufemi Oladejo, Kane Madrano has also been seen getting down and kind of putting some pressure there with the pass rush. So they're just trying different things.
Yeah,
they're not set on
32 of the 43 sacks last year are off the team. They're gone. Pro, transferred out,
gone.
Whatever the case may be, gone. So do you think Foster is going to scheme up pressure? Do you think they have the talent on the defensive line to just send the boys?
It just kind of remains to be seen. The one thing that they have working for them is one, they have Akaika Malloy returning. He's taking over as defensive coordinator. He took over for the LA Bowl after they had a departure or two there. Well, I guess that's when D'Anton Lynn left for USC.
Oh, you said his name, that dirty man.
Yeah,
it's rival.
Yeah,
that spoke
that bothered a lot of people, including Josh Woods. He can't even say USC. He has to say the team across the street. But
that's awesome. I love it.
Akaika Malloy takes over. He was the defensive line coach and was working with Latu, working with the guys for that pass rush. So now he's the defensive coordinator. So he's probably going to try and work on that, or he's going to know the weaknesses there and is going to try and work around it, right? They're going to try and keep a very similar defense to what they have. It's just a matter of what they're going to get from those guys. The thing is they got a guy in the middle, Jay Toya, who's that top prospect for UCLA on the defensive side. They almost lost him, the defensive tackle there. He, in the middle of the spring camp, decides, I'm going to enter the portal and I'm going to go check out Texas's spring game. And we're, oh, okay. And
world, man.
NIL kind of played a part there. They did enough to bring him back in. Supposedly he came back in from the airport from that Texas spring game and was wearing UCLA shorts on the plane ride back from Texas. So however that dynamic works, but yeah, he's back with UCLA. He's going to be a big presence for them. And I think a lot of the attention, instead of going to Latu the way that it was, it's going to go on to Jay Toya and trying to stop him. So maybe that opens it up a little bit for the pass rush there. And I think Akaika Malloy is going to recognize that and try and put some of that to his advantage.
This is something I didn't realize as an outsider. Over the last 12 years, UCLA is 6-6 versus USC. There's no big brother, little brother thing anymore. Thanks for bringing that sports gear.
That's the thing. They're swapping.
Geek, sorry.
Yeah, sports geek. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They swap wins. And when I started covering UCLA, I'm like, oh man, USC is probably gonna wreck these boys year in and year out. And I think they won the first game or two. And then after that, they've just kind of they've been exchanging wins. It's been pretty even. So it's funny every time I hear UCLA or USC as this top 10 team or this top 10 program. And then everyone's like, UCLA. And I'm like, I mean, when they get on the field, it looks pretty even. I mean, sure, it's a rivalry game. So everyone's playing to the best of their ability. You know what I mean? Or that it gets taken up a notch. But yeah, I mean, it looked pretty even to me, so I don't get what all the hype's about, kind of.
And they're getting that underrated mentality even coming into the Big Ten. Like everyone's putting them at the very bottom.
Oh yeah,
we've been really harsh on them because of a running back coach being promoted to head coach without coordinating experience. And schedule. We were just like, damn, they might as well just give up on football.
Yeah, I mean,
it's tough. That's got to be.
It is. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. And I mean, that's why part of me is like, well, if you're going to have this hard schedule, get it out of the way now. And then maybe things can open up a little bit for you. But again, I'm just like, is it going to get any easier if you're not playing Ohio State? Wisconsin's not on the schedule. Michigan's not on the schedule. There's still like some teams out there.
Man, like Hawaii. I mean, Hawaii's not tough, but you got to go to Hawaii. And then Fresno State's never a joke, man. Like anytime you play Fresno State, like they're good enough to catch you. Like,
well,
if you're happy for that game too, like
I gotta go check out Fresno State's schedule. They're playing everyone.
So the thing with Fresno State, I'll get to Fresno State in a minute, but UCLA's non-conference schedule since I've been covering the team, very few of the non-conference games were on the road. There'd be like 3 straight home games, and one season it was like Alabama State, Bowling Green, and it might have been like Hawaii or something. Like Hawaii or Fresno State's the big dog for the non-conference, right? They play these other FCS schools or whatever the case may be, and then it's one of those Mountain West schools, right? The thing is, they played Fresno State the last couple of years. So I mentioned that LSU UCLA game where UCLA was coming off a high playing against LSU and beating them. They had a bye week. Then that next week they fumbled around and lost to Fresno State. Fresno State has gotten the best of UCLA the last couple of years. So think of it this way. At the end of this year, they're playing USC. Maybe they win that game. They're coming off a high. They're playing against Fresno State in that final game of the season. Maybe the guys are starting to relax a little bit. They're resting on their laurels a little bit, and they get caught slipping by a Fresno State again. The one thing you look at that schedule, and the reason why I think they even have Fresno State at the bottom of that schedule is because that last month or so, all those games keep them on the West Coast. I think Washington might be as far out as they go.
Oh, trying to avoid that weather.
In
Then
that
Hawaii,
final month.
that's for recruiting and a trip for the team. That's a 2 wins. You're just hitting check marks.
That's the thing. I mean, they have to have their ducks in the row from the beginning to know it's not a vacation, right? They got to know it's about business from the jump. And I think they'll understand that. But yeah, I mean, going to Hawaii.
This is kind of why they're going out there.
And wait till the Big Ten starts. They'll have to say the same thing about going to LA. Like, this ain't no vacation. We got to come out here and win.
Right. Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, for the fans, it will be. For them, they get out of that weather, they can come check out LA and see that the hype isn't real here in LA.
And
just in general.
There'll be some teams that fill that stadium just because we want to get out of the snow, man.
So, like I'm saying, the attendance hasn't been great. I think that's one of the biggest pluses for UCLA when it comes to the transition to the Big Ten, is you're going to have a lot of these teams that weren't familiar with or making the Rose Bowl game, right? And you're going to get Iowa. I've had some Iowa fans, say, hey, we're excited to come to the Rose Bowl. We're excited to come out there and meet you, yada, yada, yada. The Nebraska fans can't wait for their comeback game, and they can get out to LA and whatnot. The craziest thing, and maybe you guys can tell me about this too, everyone keeps telling me I need a winter coat. I don't have a winter coat. Like,
you're gonna need it, man. Wisconsin, Minnesota, Nebraska.
That's what everyone's saying. So
I gotta layer up. It's all about
last year here in Wisconsin, we got like 6 inches of snow on Halloween. If that puts it into perspective.
I mean, it could be 65. It
could be nice.
30.
But it could also be bad.
See, I mean, out here October, that's like still like 75 to 80. You know what I mean? But no, see, okay. So here's the thing. I don't want to be bringing a winter coat and then it's a sunny day out there or whatever the case is.
Just
and then
bring it.
Hey man, the weather is moody here, man. It's moody. You never know. It could be.
Let's see, it
could be 28 degrees. It could be 80.
Season.
Like you just don't know, man.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not that bad. You like that Rutgers game in October 19th. You're gonna need a light jacket. You're gonna need some jeans. Maybe a heavy sweater under that light jacket, just in case.
Maybe a flannel or something.
Yeah, get that flannel, get that going. Now you're talking Big Ten. Get that
I'm gonna have to make a list.
I went to
Nebraska in November. Who knows?
They said that could be hit or miss. It could be 35 degrees. It could be 65 degrees.
The wind, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get that blistering cold wind, like you're at the beach coming off that breeze coming through, man.
Gotcha. Okay.
You know when you walk 2 years ago, it was, I think, the first week of December. It was like 16 degrees. It was just
see.
And it was an overtime game, of course, too. It was nasty, but it was fun. But it's nasty weather.
I don't know. The one advantage I have with all that is I'll probably be in the press box and they'll probably have the heater on. But I'm just like,
that's right.
Still going out pregame and all the other stuff. I mean, I'll still
that
be
elevator up to the press box. You're gonna be like, "Yo, dude, get close."
Oh yeah, it's gonna be like an igloo in there with everyone looking like, yeah, exactly. But I'm looking forward to it. I mean, we don't have a whole lot of snow here unless you make it go out of your way to go to the mountains, and I'm not doing that. So,
Big Bear,
Big Bear. Yeah, I'm not that far from Big Bear actually. So, yeah, I mean, it'll be an experience, and I think my transition for the Big Ten is it's going to be a little bit of a culture shock and a little bit humbling of an experience, I'm sure.
I was out there for the Battle of LA.
Snow, man. It's when it's like 35 and rainy and windy. That's when it's the worst. Like the snow you can deal with, but when it's like right on the fringe of being like freezing cold, but it's windy, super windy and rainy, like that's the worst.
I don't know how you guys do it.
I was out there for the Battle of LA. And I was going around the tailgates just filming some stuff. And all of a sudden I go to one of the UCLA, I think it was like a student-sponsored one. And there was the mariachi bands playing and everyone was dancing. I was like, man, when the Big Ten fans come out and see this, it's going to be such a cultural shock. I mean, fortunately for me, my wife's from Venezuela, so I'm used to the Hispanic culture, and I love it. I wanted to get out there and dance a little bit.
Right.
If my wife was here, this would be so much fun. But I was just walking around like that weird guy taking videos of it and watching it. It was sweet.
It happens. I mean, that's the thing with the Rose Bowl and that whole experience is like people will knock UCLA, but there's still so much more to even if you just go to a UCLA game just because you get to be in the Rose Bowl, the history for it. Everyone always tells me like, you're so lucky to be there. Like you get to be in the Rose Bowl. And I'm just like, I guess. Like, I don't know
It's
any
an
better
everyday
because it's just an everyday thing. Like, I'm here every other week. So, but everyone's like, no, you need to appreciate it. And I hear people say, like, no, the national championship game needs to be played at the Rose Bowl. It doesn't need to be played at SoFi or anywhere else. And I'm like, I guess if they could fill it up. Like, my expectation or just my perception of it is just like, I mean, I guess that's cool, but I don't know. It's fun. I like it.
I'll warn the USC, UCLA, Washington, and Duck fans. Prepare for some weird accent guys coming from the Midwest because we love to travel. And the only reason we love to travel is because there ain't shit here but the cold snow. So I guarantee you're going to see all kinds of Big Ten fans out in LA.
And we're going to be super friendly. We're going to talk to everyone.
That's what
and
I
you
heard.
won't be able to leave. You won't be able to say bye.
They're going to talk it to death.
20 minutes long. Yeah.
I mean, hey,
we got to ask you about
the stadium anyways. Go ahead.
We got to ask you about the Grizzly in the room, man. That media day speech from Coach Foster on a scale of holy shit to damn. How was it for
you? So part of me, when I saw it, didn't come off as surprising. A lot of that is because Deshaun Foster he's not a mute, but he lets he's focused. He lets the pads he still has that player mentality, right? Of like, I'm a running back. Like I'm about my business. Give me the ball and let me do my talking that way. So he's kind of carried that on
before I go out of bounds.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So he has that player mentality. But the thing is, like, you see a lot of these other programs and they have their assistant coaches talking to the media and whatnot. The thing with Chip Kelly, the first 3 years, we didn't talk to any assistant coaches. And then during the spring was the only time maybe we'd get one shot at a few assistant coaches. So Deshaun Foster wasn't getting a whole lot of media reps prior to whatever he may have been getting as an NFL player, right? If that. So there wasn't a whole lot of media experience, him having to get up in front of a bunch of people. He was sweating buckets at his press conference. I mean, I probably would have too when I'm first introduced as a head coach and you're living out your dream there. But again, I mean, you're going to be on that big media stage, but I mean, you get rushed up there. You look out. It's this big empty stadium. It's this big empty NFL stadium because it's for an NFL event, not a media event. Then you just see rows of media in front of you. I don't know if I would have done any better. I've had some high school presentations that have probably looked a little similar back in the day. Obviously, it's a different situation with Deshaun. But, the thing is, if you look at what he did the rest of that day, when he's on CBS, when he's on this podcast, when he's doing a more intimate media scrum and the media is just asking him questions, right? And it's something they're asking him about just, other than how does it feel to be in the Big Ten? When they ask him about his players and the things he knows about and the things that he's passionate about, then I think that's when he's at his best. And he did well for himself. I mean, of course, the biggest moment of the day, you fumble the ball there a little bit, but he's bounced back well. He has the UCLA in LA with whatnot.
The shirt, man, I loved it. Like, own it. That was great.
That was the best clapback. I mean, I feel like if I would have been in that situation, that's how I would have handled it. I make fun of myself all the time. I mean, we make fun of ourselves all the time.
And we have to. Yeah.
Yeah. We had you got to have fun with it. We had, we posted some things about UCLA in one of the Facebook groups, and some dude was like, what did he say? AJ, do you remember exact comments? Something along the lines of, these guys are like former frat boys and going through menopause.
Former has-been frat boys who are going through menopause, just trying to be relevant. I was like dying. I thought they kind of nailed that one.
It's crazy. Yeah, he's Deshaun's a good dude. I've had him on the podcast a few times, and he's nice. He's great. He was great. Yeah. I mean,
oh, we lost your audio.
We lost you. Nothing.
How are we now?
We're good.
Yeah, we got you.
Okay. I think I touched the mic. But anyway, so, I've had him on the podcast before. He's done well. I think, again, maybe just a little stage fright. Maybe there's a little bit more he could have done to be prepared. The thing with Deshaun, again, that player mentality, you fumble the ball. I think the next time he's in that situation, it won't happen again. He's going to be ready.
Happening no more.
Yeah, he's going to use that as motivation to not let it happen again.
Absolutely. So this is my perspective.
Yeah.
It might just be an experience thing. First of all, he was a running back coach. He didn't have that transition to coordinator where you're getting a little bit more of the limelight and you're talking. And number two, maybe, and I'm just guessing here, I'm guessing that you have an assistant write your speeches for you, right? And more or less, he didn't have that because he hadn't been there, and he wasn't prepared for that. It was like, I want to focus on football. I want to get it from point A to point B and be ready to play the game. I don't care about speeches. And then he just got out there and he was like, well, maybe I should have prepared for this one.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, and I know that's a good point. And I think, again, part of it is he was so late in the hiring cycle when they brought him on
and immersed.
that he needed to get, he needed to get into it and get that football team right and make sure everyone wasn't transferring out. He had to, jump on recruiting and get those relationships going again. The last thing he was thinking about is a media day where he's going to be up there for 20 minutes. Right. So
the worst of their worries, but
what I always like to say when people start critiquing somebody else for anything is like, hey, man, you're not the man in the arena. Like, you don't know what it's like to be in that shoe. You don't know what it's like to lead a program like UCLA. Like, you just don't know, man. Like, put yourself up there, and I guarantee you a lot of people.
That's what I'm saying. I wouldn't have done any better.
We got to give Brad a shout out. Brad from Hawkaholics, man. That podcast is only 2 episodes through, and they had like 4,500 views in the first hour. It was awesome. Yeah.
The thing I'm learning, especially with the Big Ten and obviously with the SEC, is y'all are just about football. Like out here, there's a bunch of other stuff that going on in LA and everything else, and like UCLA.
There's
sometimes
no surfing in Ohio, man.
Yeah,
we surf on Lake Michigan. I'm just saying, we surf on Lake Michigan.
I mean, you do what you got to do. No, but it's like there's just so much going on out here. Just the attention. I was talking to some Nebraska podcast, and like they're all about their ball because that's all there is. Corn and ball. So it's like, I'm like, oh, like y'all are about your business in this conference, right?
That's the way it is in the Midwest, man. Like after summer, you got fall and you're working the fields. As soon as that's it, Oktoberfest, man, it's football season. Like you name it. September, we're shutting down the fields. Oktoberfest, there's nothing else going on at that time. It's just ball.
Right.
Man. You live for Saturdays.
Yeah, there's not even paved roads up here, man.
Yeah,
I had some comments like that when I was in LA for a little while. Ohio, do you even have paved roads?
I've heard Pat McAfee and all them say there's potholes all over Indiana, and it's the worst. And I'm like, oh, well, I'm renting a car. I ain't taking any of my own personal stuff out there. I'm not going that way. Yeah, so it ain't gonna be me. But yeah, I'm like, that's nuts. I got to watch out for that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of anything else that to welcome you to. Penn State might be a little rough. Don't wear your colors there if you go through the student section. I mean, bags of piss will be thrown at you. Yeah, I mean, it's
fan base.
It gets a little crazy there.
They're a mean fan base, man. Like, look at anything Pennsylvania sports, right? Look at Philly. Like, they're out there,
when you say
man.
that,
Like, Pennsylvania sports fans are out there.
I forget Penn State's in, when you put it that way.
It used to be bad at Ohio State. It's not quite the same as it used to be. They kind of nipped that a while ago. I'm trying to think.
But the more you get to Nebraska,
you're going to have
Midwest, like as soon as you start getting into Wisconsin, Nebraska, Minnesota, everybody's like stupid
super
Midwest nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, like, that hospitality kicks in there.
You will not be able to get out of Wisconsin or Nebraska without having a 6-pack of beer.
I took Beef to a Wisconsin game last year, and I think we walked 5 minutes from the car, and we already got invited to a tailgate and got handed food and drinks. And same thing in Nebraska.
Shoved down. I'm trying not to drink, man. I get hangovers like crazy, so I'm like, I don't want that. I'm good. And shoved beers down my throat, shoved shots down my throat. I was like, man,
Nebraska pretty much. We got a chauffeur the entire Saturday. We showed up early for the game, and this guy just took us to his tailgate. Met with him after the game, went out and partied with him after the game. Like, it's just
damn. That's I mean, that's the way you got to do it if you're going to do it. I mean, that's but I mean the bag of piss thing.
Pennsylvania, they're not like the rest, man. They're a little wild. Ohio State's a little wild.
Well, they booed Santa right at the Eagles game, so I mean.
But we got to give some credit where credit's due. The older fans, the more mature fans have been awesome at Penn State. They totally make up for it. The Penn State painters, we got to give them a shout out. We met them at Northwestern. I went up there. They invited me to a tailgate. They were playing like bagpipes. They had everything under the sun. I mean,
that's what we did, Travis. They threw a beer at us. We just drank it, man. We just knocked out McGregor.
You're like, do it again. So that's it, huh? It's bagpipes on one part of the world, and over here it's the mariachi. Okay, I got it.
Right.
It's kind of the same.
It's a little different.
It's a little different, but a little bit different, but a little bit the same.
That's exactly right, man. We appreciate you coming here.
No worries.
Thanks for joining us. It's been awesome. I wish you the best. I wish Josh Woods the best, man. I hope his recovery goes well and he gets back at it. He's in Vancouver?
He's in Vancouver right now, yeah, because like I said, he's playing for the BC Lions in the Canadian Football League, went down with the ACL and just had surgery on Wednesday that was successful. So we'll be following up with him on the next podcast and kind of catching up to see what the next steps are for him. So
right on. Prayers for a quick recovery for him then.
Yeah, it's his second one at UCLA. He had the other ACL go out on him, I believe.
That's
so
tough.
He kind of knows the routine and the grind. So he's kind of just taking it in stride and powering through it. But boys, I appreciate you guys having me on. I mean, there's going to be a lot of Big Ten action here over the next couple months. So if you guys want me on at any other point,
absolutely.
Yeah, we'd love to have you back, man. We love enjoy talking ball with you, man. It was a good time. So
awesome,
maybe
man.
Josh could even do a little episode of breaking down some linebacker film sometime. That would be awesome.
We'll try and make something like that happen. I'll have to reach out to him. That's the thing. I mean, if like that's the kind of stuff you start pitching to him now while he needs things to do.
While he's rehabbing.
So,
yeah. Right.
While he needs things to do.
That.
So we'll have to try and pitch that one to him and see if we can get that to happen.
Cool. Right on, man. Appreciate you.
Awesome.
Appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
All right. Big Ten backers out. We're going to play you a little goodbye video. And that is pretty much the show. Thanks again for James coming on. If y'all haven't caught him yet, BLEAV in UCLA, go hit him up. Big Ten backers out, man.
God bless.
Big Ten backers live here. We got some UCLA fans. What do you think? All right, what do you think about the game? What's the score going to be?
Oh, I'm going 42-45 UCLA.
Woo!
I think it's going to be more low scoring. I'm going to say 28-25 UCLA.
Low scoring. Have you watched any of the games at USC?
I do. I think UCLA's defense is going to slow down USC, and USC's defense is going to allow UCLA to score.
All right. So I'm taking that. UCLA has a great defense.
Yeah, they do. They're going to slow them down today.
Is Chip Kelly going to be fired after today?
Yes.
Unfortunately, yes.
Chip Kelly's gone.
Chip Kelly is gone.
Oh, man. So we're the Big Ten backers. What do you think about joining the Big Ten?
I love it. Huge for the program.
I think it's a great move.
Huge for both teams.
So
it'll be interesting. But
what flyover state do you want to visit first?
Nebraska.
That's a good one.
Nebraska's a good one.
I think the environment there is electric.
Yeah, it is.
The whole city shuts down just for Saturday.
Yeah.
Dude. UCLA!